Calgary Flames have a pretty good idea of who they will have under contract for next season, under the assumption that the UFAs will get traded or won't sign, and barring any blockbuster trades. The big question then becomes what to do with the RFAs and what their contracts will look like, which is massive for the future of the franchise. Which young guns deserve a huge payday? We're going to get into all that and more in this video, but first I want to welcome you to Flames Digest. I'm Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around your Calgary Flames. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family. Let's hop in. Let's talk about how this is massive for the future, and let's talk about some contract projections for some of our RFAs, because the Flames have some very, very good ones, and obviously would probably like to keep them in all likelihood. Now, we have an outstanding article here, all credit due to Mr. Colton Pankow for this one. He kind of sets the whole things, and we'll be kind of, I guess, judging almost his predictions / projections for these contracts here. Great outline, so thank you so much. Let's get in. Contract predictions for 4 Calgary Flames RFAs. And as you can see there, one of them is going to be Connor Zary, which I think every single Flames fan would like to keep him around. Not that you necessarily lose him like you would a UFA, but still, you need to get your RFA signed, of course. So after locking up Braden Pahal to a 2-year extension on Tuesday, the attention now turns to some of their key pending restricted free agents. Because let's face it, we've all talked about the upcoming UFAs a million times. Dan Vladar, Andrei Kuzmenko. We've talked about Mantha, obviously. His situation's weird, but let's stick to some RFAs. So forwards, Connor Zary, Matt Coronato, and Jacob Pelche will all need new deals ahead of the 2025-26 season, as will defenseman Kevin Ball. So there you go, 4 pretty big names, and you'd assume the Flames would want to keep all 4 of them. So Zary and Coronato specifically look like the types of players you want to build around, while Ball has fit in seamlessly on the back end. I'd almost argue Ball might be the most valuable out of all these guys. Obviously Zary is as well, but Ball is unreal. There are still questions surrounding the 23-year-old Pelche, but he's played quite well in limited minutes since being called up from the AHL earlier in the month. The Flames shouldn't have any issues in terms of finding the money to sign these players. They have well north of $20 million in cap space as per Puckpedia, and don't have any other rostered players they need to worry about handing big money to this coming off-season. The cap is also expected to jump up rather significantly, giving them a ton of flexibility. So the Flames will have loads of money. The only thing is you don't always want to commit too much money to these guys, just in case you do end up making, a big trade later on or a big signing in the future, or you have, another guy come up who will need to sign after his ELC is done and will want big bucks. So it's good that we have loads of cap space, of course. It's just, I'm sure Conroy knows, but pump the brakes a little on handing out too lucrative of contracts based on how all 4 have looked so far in their career, in a big part this season. Here's an idea of what you can expect their contracts to look like. So again, shout out Mr. Pankow for kind of making these projections / predictions for us. So the first one, the big name, Connor Zary. The projected deal, 8 years, $52 million, 6.5 AAV. So obviously Connor Zary's going to be looking for term. I don't really expect him to be signing one of those bridge contracts like we've seen players like Matthew Tkachuk do or Austin Matthews did. He's obviously very good, but in no way is he going to be putting up like a 120-point season anytime soon. So sign while you can, while the value's still there with, that whole potential aspect to it. I think this is a very fair contract. Honestly, I think this is a great number for both the player and the Flames. But if we get here, so his stats this year, we should just say 32 games played, 17 points. So a little better than a point every other game. Obviously, the offensive numbers aren't quite where we'd want them to be, but he has so much more to his game. Connor Zary is posting nearly identical stats to the 14 goals and 34 points he had in his 63-game rookie campaign a season ago. The numbers don't jump off the page, but those who watch the 23-year-old on a nightly basis see how big of an impact he provides in many area. Zary's offensive game is going to continue growing, and his play defensively is everything and more you could ask for a player his age. So I think this is a very fair here. But again, for this one and all the ones we'll be looking at in this video, feel free to drop your own projections for what you think these deals might be. And obviously these could look very different at the end of the season, depending on how some of these guys do this upcoming year. If Zary explodes offensively, could be more expensive. Same thing with Coronato. Kevin Ball, I'm sure, will be roughly the same, and it totally depends on how much Pelche plays. But I like this one for Zary a lot. I think it's both quite team-friendly and generous to the player as well. Now let's get into the next one, Matty Scoronado. I think this one is on a lot of people's minds. So projected deal of 3 years, $9 million for that $3 million AAV. This is obviously a bridge deal, which makes sense for a guy who still hasn't quite broken out. He has the potential to do so after he hasn't done too much on his ELC. So it looks like this is the most realistic contract at this point. $3 million AAV, again, I think that's fair because he hasn't put up exactly the best numbers of all time. And it's pretty team friendly because it's not too expensive when the cap is so much. So again, I think this is quite a realistic deal. His stats this year, in 27 games, he has 8 goals, 6 assists for 14 points, but he's played really, really well, even though those numbers, once again, don't pop. After a rookie season that featured some growing pains, Coronado is starting to make leaps and bounds as a player right in front of our eyes. He may not be a talked about goal scorer around the NHL just yet, but that time is coming. Boom, there. That pretty much explains why it's a bridge deal. The risk when it comes to locking Coronado up long-term is that he isn't as well-rounded as Zary. If he isn't scoring, he doesn't have the same tools to be as effective. That makes the bridge deal a safer play here, one which would allow Coronado the opportunity to bet on himself and potentially earn a boatload afterward. The risk, of course, for the Flames is that he would no longer be Flames property, but you hope in these situations that the player wants to stay. Is that the case when it comes to the Calgary Flames? Not really, especially Americans that play for the Flames. But either way, I think this is a very realistic one once again. Let's get into Pelt. So a projected deal of 2-year, $2.4 million. Another, I suppose, bridge deal you can call it, but when he's been this disappointing, it's really just the most fair thing out there. But his stats this year, in 6 games, he's got the 1 goal and 2 assists for 3 points, which is pretty good. After an injury-riddled 2023-24 season, Pelche seems to be regaining his confidence and getting back to the player the Flames had high hopes for a few years ago. He still has that potential, but in no way are the Flames going to sign him to a long-term deal, and I don't think Pelche expects that either. So a 2-year deal, I think he could be swayed by. Around this number isn't too bad at all. It's not like it's all that much less than Coronado anyway. So I think this is, once again, a pretty fair projection and could definitely be a realistic contract. Again, totally depends on how much he ends up playing this year, but I think that's quite realistic. Let's get into the last one here. Kevin Ball, the absolute stalwart D-man at the back. So projected deal, 4 years, $16 million for $4 million AAV. His stats this year, he's got 1 goal, 10 assists, 11 points in 32 games. But as a big defensive defenseman, you don't expect all that much. And this deal's interesting. So not many would have projected Kevin Ball to be signed to an extension like the one above before this season began, but it's a testament to how good he's been in his first year with the Flames. So before the season started, a lot of people wouldn't think it would be this long or this much. Is it all that much? This could end up looking like one of the best contracts in the entire league if it were signed like this. Kevin Ball's value is so insane. He's such a good player. He brings so much. I know lately him and Andersson have not been clicking. His plus minus has dipped significantly, but he's still a very, very good defensive D-man, which are hard to come by in this day and age in the NHL. And it's really, really good to, have this opportunity to sign him, obviously with not too much term, and it's not that expensive. I like this contract a lot. But once again, let me know down below how you feel about it. Let's get into tonight's game because it is going to be a doozy. The Flames are at home once again, and they face the Ottawa Senators, one of the hottest teams in the league right now. They be stopping lots of pucks, which is a little concerning because the Flames don't score all that much. But this one goes at 7 p.m. local time at the Dome. As you can see there, MacKenzie Weegar, he gets to play against his hometown team. I'll also be at this game, so if you run into me, make sure you say hi. I absolutely love running into you guys, meeting you guys when we're at the game. Should be super cool. Thing to take note of is, of course, the lineup. Let's start at the bottom, talk about the starting goalie tonight is Dan Vladar. So once again, Vladar getting back in after he's obviously been out for a little bit. Hopefully he's rested up and should play very well. The lines don't look too different than the past games. We really need to get Sharangovich going. My goodness, he has been disappointing. And the D pairings, Hanley playing with Weegar should be quite an interesting one here. No Miramanov as a little note there. But there's your lineup. Should be a fun one. And again, hopefully I will see you at the game. Let's wrap this one up with the comment of the day, as we love to do here on the channel. It, of course, comes from yesterday's video, and it comes from Mr. Dave. Now, Dave said, Flames are desperate for a good center, but their problem is they're probably going to finish in the middle of the pack as usual, which means they have no hope in getting a starting center in the 2025 draft without giving up significant assets. And that's completely true. The Flames would have to trade down. And the one thing a lot of people seem to always forget is that the Flames, if they don't finish bottom 10, they do not keep their pick, which is really a big deal with where the Flames are at this point. I know so many people don't want to see the team tank. I'm not saying I want to see the team tank either, but there are pros to it, and it would be keeping that first round pick. But I know there's so many different ways this could go, so many permutations and combinations if we throw back to grade 10 math. But either way, it should be very, very interesting here to see what does end up happening with the Flames center issue for the future. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe like you saw here today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.